Today on the Playbook Podcast, Donald Trump is in South Korea and will be sitting down for dinner shortly with the president. He was gaggling on the plane over last night. We've got all the latest on what he said. And interest rates are likely to be cut this afternoon. We'll be talking all things Jay Powell. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Wednesday, October 29th.
And this is the Playbook Podcast. How you doing, Dasha?
Happy hump day.
I was listening to Donald Trump on the plane over to South Korea last night, wondering if you were envious of the gaggle of journalists on board that plane and in Asia for a week, or thanking your lucky stars that you get to stay in DC this time.
Listen, with this administration, we all get our fair share, and mostly what we all do is spend our time listening to the president speak. I'm glad I slept in my own bed last night.
By the time you're listening to this morning, Trump should be sitting down for dinner with the South Korean president, Lee Jae-myung. He landed in Korea last night. This is the final leg of his Asian tour. As regular listeners will know, he's already been to Malaysia and Japan this week. Today's trade talks, Dasha, with President Lee look a bit trickier than the other meetings that Donald Trump has had so far to me. They have this sort of outstanding issue with Korea about the details of their trade deal. And Donald Trump's very keen for everything to be a big win and a big deal and a big success. But I'm not so sure that today is going to go so well. A lot of the reporting about Politico is that they're not going to reach the agreement today that they need to move a trade deal forward between the two nations.
Yeah, this is one of those trade deals that was touted like pretty early on as a big success, but it was a framework. It wasn't exactly the ironed out details, and that's the goal of this meeting. But as you said, a lot of experts and based on our reporting, it's not the sort of relationship that he has with Japan. It's and also not what he has with China, which is going to be much more challenging and much more high stakes. But this is one that they really want to use to put more points on the board when it comes to these deals. But we'll see if it ends up being successful.
Yeah, it's all a bit of a precursor for tomorrow, isn't it? When he's sitting down with President Xi Jinping of China for the first time since 2019. There's so much for those guys to talk about. Trump was asked about this on the plane over last night, and I have to say he sounded very positive going into the meeting with Xi, didn't he? He was saying it's going to be a big success. It's going to be great for the world.
Yeah, he was really excited. He was also really optimistic that Xi and China would come through on promises around fentanyl and curb the fentanyl that's coming from China into the U.S. And some reporters press further on that. It doesn't seem like there are any like concrete details or any specific reasons that he gave why he's so optimistic, but he's feeling like that's at least part of the win that he can come out with.
Yeah, he talked about doing well with the rare earths thing. Of course, China imposed those controls on rare earth minerals not very long ago, which triggered the latest row and the latest blow up in the trade war. He sounded very positive about that. But as you say, with Donald Trump, you never really get the detail, do you? He just sort of gives this sense that everything's a tremendous success, and that's what he wants to come across.
He's been posting on Truth Social over the last several weeks, like, don't worry about China. China will be fine. We'll see what that means.
Good to know. I wonder if they agree in Taiwan. There was a really interesting story on NBC last night. Your old stable, Dasha.
My old stomping grounds.
Yeah, reporting that some of the aides around Donald Trump are worried that he will give some ground on Taiwan tomorrow. That he will either, just sort of casually, in the way that people who criticize him think that he can do, just sort of casually change the American language or even the formal position on Taiwan, which would be an enormous win for Xi. Now, he was asked about this and he was very vague again on the plane. I don't know that we'll even speak about Taiwan. He said Xi might ask about it.
He said there's not much to ask about, but Taiwan is Taiwan.
Meaning he won't shift his position, you mean?
Right. In like Dasha translates Trump land, he says, what's there to talk about? Taiwan is Taiwan. And in his words, meaning like the situation needs to stay status quo. But who knows what happens once he gets in the room. I mean, that is what's both fascinating and scary, depending on who you are, when Trump has these meetings with these other powerful leaders with their own agendas that don't always align with ours. You just don't know what's going to happen between those two individuals.
While we're doing foreign affairs, and in a similar vein, really, he was asked about the latest breakout of violence in Gaza, and in much the same way, he just sort of pushes forward this very positive vibe on the situation. When people saw Netanyahu ordering airstrikes in Gaza yesterday, a lot of people's reaction is, oh, this is it. The ceasefire's over. It's shattered. This is a disaster. Trump's like, well, nothing's going to jeopardize the ceasefire, and he just sort of says these things happen. Israel's right to hit back, but Hamas is just one small part of this.
So that part, Hamas is just one small part of peace in the Middle East. He repeated it a couple of times, and that just caught my ear. It's something that I'm curious to see what he ends up doing with that little phrase, because he did bring together all of these different stakeholders in Egypt, right, a couple of weeks ago, and that to him, I think, was symbolizing this new era in that region. And so now Hamas is one small part. In reality, of course, Hamas is a massive part of the most dire part of Middle East peace, which is the war between Israel and Hamas. So um, we'll see if that means it's going to be fine and it is fine, or if that means that these tensions might escalate again, but that doesn't mean that there's no peace in his mind.
The most interesting bit of the whole, huddle on the plane, I think, was him talking about this idea of having a third term
Yes.
as president, which he enjoys sort of poking the bear on this one and kicking the idea around. Mike Johnson, speaker, came out pretty strongly on this yesterday and was basically like, it's not going to happen, guys. Like, essentially said Donald Trump is trolling. And
He
I
didn't
feel
like that term, though. Trump didn't like the term trolling when
he
it was brought up
didn't.
to him on on
He
the
didn't.
plane.
Well, he sort of felt like it probably wasn't the sort of language that Mike Johnson uses.
Yeah, Mike wouldn't
but
say that.
but Trump really seemed to me to put this one to bed last night. He basically said the Constitution says I can't, and that's a shame. And we have great people to run.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have always seen this dangling of a third term much more as a way for him to avoid seeming or feeling like a lame duck president than as a serious plan. But last night he was surprisingly definitive on it, and of course, we talked about just yesterday how he has been referencing Vance and Rubio. So it seems like that is starting to sort of coalesce and crystallize in his mind.
Yeah, he sounded resigned to it. He said it was a sad thing because right now he has the highest numbers, meaning his poll rating, that he's ever had. And he's on this great run, as he believes it, of ending wars and economic success. Not everyone would agree with those characterizations, but he obviously does. And then he said, but if you read it, it's pretty clear I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad. Well, that sounded like a president resigned to his two-term fate.
That's right.
Even though he very much enjoys talking about this because it's fun for him. It winds up his critics. It excites his supporters, and
Steve
it makes him
Bannon will
feel
be
good.
heartbroken. Bannon's been out on a on a circuit
Steve-
talking about Trump's
Steve
third
Bannon
term.
knows exactly what he's doing. You talk about trolling. That guy obviously enjoys winding people up more than just
But
about
he'll be so
anybody in the
sad.
scene. He'll be so sad. One more contentious thing from Trump before we get on to matters away from him. He gave this quote in the speech yesterday morning at the naval base in Japan, where he talked about the possibility of sending not just the National Guard into American cities, as he has done and as he's trying to do, but sort of something more than that. He got asked about that last night, and he immediately brought up the possibility that he could use the Insurrection Act, as he's talked about before, to sort of be more forceful in his use of the military in the US on domestic soil. And he said the words, I can send the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I can send anybody I want. Now, he wasn't saying he's going to do that. In fact, he explicitly said at the moment, we don't need to use the Insurrection Act. He's happy with how it's going. But nevertheless, an American president raising the idea of sending the Marines into an American city.
Yeah, no, it was striking. I mean, he was directly asked if that was something that he was considering by a reporter. The way that Trump often responds to these sorts of questions is always leave the possibility open to anything, and of course, sometimes that leads to nothing, and sometimes that that really leads to something. It's funny. I feel like I'm saying a lot of. There's this and then there's this and it adds up to not very much today, but that is kind of how it is in Trump world. Like there's often nothing burger, or there's like something completely unprecedented and wild and outer left field that we need to prepare for.
I totally know what you mean. I just think the fact that he's prepared, you asked any other president, what about sending the Marines into a city? They would be like, no, that's not going to happen. He's literally putting it out there that he can do it if he wants to, and he enjoys that kind of talk. But it's worth remembering. I think that this is not a normal thing for a president to be talking about.
I remember every day. We are not in normal times.
One thing he didn't get asked about was Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed board. But of course, we know exactly what he thinks about him, and we'll be hearing from Jerome Powell this afternoon back here in DC. He's got his 2:30 press conference that wraps up the 2-day meeting of the Fed board, and the expectation, Dasha, is that we're going to see interest rates cut again today. This is something Trump's obviously been pushing extremely hard for some time. He'll probably say it's not enough, but nevertheless, he'll feel like a step in the right direction for the administration, I guess.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Meanwhile, all the possible replacements for Powell are going to be watching closely and waiting in the wings.
Yeah, we heard Scott Bessent this week laying out there's a sort of 5-person shortlist at the moment, to which Trump turned around and said, well, maybe it'll be Scott Bessent,
Once again, you just don't know.
You just don't know exactly. But I think from the Fed's point of view, it's a really interesting meeting, this one, because normally they make these decisions based on a load of economic data, as you'd expect, that the government has issued statements on GDP, statements on the labor market, employment situation, and so on. None of those reports are coming out at the moment, or very few of them, because of the government shutdown. And so, in a sense, they're flying blind, if not flying blind, a lot blinder than they normally would be, which isn't exactly reassuring if you care about the economy.
Yeah, and that's a good place to remember the government is in fact still shut down.
The government is in fact still shut down. You're quite right. It's day 29 of the shutdown, and without wanting to repeat myself for the 29th time, there's no end in sight. Dasha, do you want to take a punt on it? How long do you reckon this is going to go on for?
I was talking to somebody, a very good source yesterday, that was betting it's going to go till Thanksgiving, which, my goodness, I mean, the travel nightmare that is going to be, and who gets the blame for that. I mean, that is going to be some ugly stuff. I don't know. I do think that if the November 1st date is not going to create an off-ramp, it might at least show us how they might get there, right? Because I think we're going to see where the most anxiety starts to percolate. Is it with Dems? Is it with Republicans? Are Republicans going to start reaching out to President Trump saying you got to do something, or a Democrat's going to start saying, listen, we got to figure out a way to message our way out of this, or a few of them get picked off that are in those key swing states, and just end up voting for the CR. We could be in for weeks more, though.
Weeks more. How are my kids going to survive without their Tyrannosaurus Rex fix? This is appalling. Before we go, Dasha,
wait, is this shutdown impacting the T-Rexes?
Are you kidding me? You can't go to the Natural History Museum. Come on, man. They've been down there hammering on the gates, yelling about the Democrats, yelling about the Republicans.
I was just imagining a T-Rex and wolf cricket scene.
It's bad down here, but it's not that bad yet. Anything's possible. Before we go, Dasha, the administration is getting angry at Hollywood again in a very specific way. Tell us about this.
And politics drama. Yeah, this is such a collision of worlds. So there's a film that's out called House of Dynamite. I saw it last weekend. It's great. And it is about the moments leading up to a nuclear missile coming right at the United States, launched by we don't know who. It's a series of characters in different parts of the US government trying to figure that out and taking action. And it's fascinating. A slight spoiler alert. But there is a moment where we try to intercept the nuclear missile, and we miss. Our interceptors don't work, and the Pentagon is not happy with that depiction. They don't like that. The phrase that was used, and it's actually used by some experts. It's saying it's trying to intercept a nuclear missile like that with the technology we have right now is trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. So it's very difficult to do. The Pentagon is saying, no, it's 100% accurate. And
100% accurate.
100% accurate. And now the screenwriter, Noah Oppenheim, who's actually the former president of NBC News, is responding saying, we talked to a bunch of experts and like we depict this pretty accurately in the movie. And so he respectfully disagrees with the Pentagon taking issue with his
I love it.
screenplay.
Only this Pentagon could take a Hollywood movie personally and get upset about
I
it.
know. I do feel like DC tends to take depictions of DC pretty personally. it's a
very
touchy
true.
crowd here.
That is very true. Tough crowd indeed. All right, brilliant. Dasha, thanks so much for being here. Thanks all for listening to today's show. We got loads more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we'll be back tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.